All right, so today's video is going to be on something called momentum. To my knowledge, this is something that I came up with that I've been using in my approach to training and my programming for quite a while at this point that I want to share with you guys a little bit. And it's not so much a training variable or something that's necessarily tangible or quantifiable, but it's something that can allow you to view your training in a little bit of a different way without having to just rely on everything being completely science-based all the time. At this point, I think a lot of you guys outside of the beginners do understand the basics of exercise science, and not even just through reading up on science or trying to stay informed with everything that comes out, but more so just understanding it because you have experience in the gym. And yeah, I mean, you can learn what volume and frequency is best through what the science says, but at the same time, if you're training for a couple years, it kind of just comes to you anyways. So without having to change your program and adapt your program to whatever study comes out, this is a mindset that I like to take within my own programming to help me take the basics of what exercise science is and view it in a much more simplistic way. And it almost breaks through kind of that cloud that's between you and the program, if that makes sense. With all that being said, let me dive into what momentum is and how you can use it in your programming. Momentum isn't necessarily something that you can quantify or program, but if you understand what it is and build awareness of it within your own training, it can help you program other variables in a more efficient and optimal way. This video, as you can tell, is going to be a part of the mindset series. This is all about mindset. I'm not going to be touching on how to actually use this with each variable. That will be saved for later this week. So let me get into this first part of the video. Momentum is up to you to experiment with. The great thing about it is that it's something that I came up with, so there's no dogma attached to it. As you guys know, I don't like when everybody just kind of does the group think and trains in one specific way, just like how power building ended up. You won't need to spend all day studying the latest exercise science studies because you'll understand your training better than any study ever will. I'm not saying that recognizing momentum within your training will turn you into an expert programmer overnight, and that's certainly not the case because I don't want to mislead you guys. It does take experience and paying your dues in the gym to actually understand programming. You can read all the science you want, but if you don't actually have hours in the gym and time invested in the gym, you won't understand it perfectly. So experience is key here. This is not a quick fix whatsoever, but it's something that can supplement and complement your experience with training over months and years. So as the months and years of lifting go on, you'll be able to recognize how it helps your programming. I'm going to assume a lot of you watching this probably understand exercise science pretty well, as in knowing about 10 or 20 sets or somewhere in between a week is generally best for hypertrophy. 2 to 3 times a week frequency is typically best. I'm also going to assume that even though you understand a lot of what you need to know about lifting, understanding programming is still the most confusing and overwhelming aspect of training. Let me explain how I implement this into my programming. So I'm going to assume that a lot of you guys at this point understand how much volume you need in the week, how much frequency you need in the week, proximity to failure. This is all stuff that, yes, you have to experiment with, but I generally think that most people understand this stuff. And if this, I want to see if this resonates with you guys. You can understand all the basics about the fundamentals of training, but I'm going to guess that a lot of you watching this understand that and you still have a hard time setting up your program and setting up your training. What I'm going to talk about in this video will be the first kind of step to overcoming the confusion and the overwhelming part of training and programming and make it all much more simplistic to you. First off, you need experience, just like I talked about earlier. If you don't have much experience lifting and trying out different methods, this won't be very useful for you. It's just the start of something. You need to build up your training age first to really understand it. When you implement momentum into your programming, keep in mind it isn't a variable itself, it's a mindset to view other training variables with. So just like I said at the start of the video, this isn't something that's tangible or quantifiable. It's something that can allow you to view other variables within your training better than you actually do right now. Because what we do in this kind of phase of lifting that we're in, where everything has to be science-based, studies contradict themselves, and science can show both ends of a spectrum can work just as well. So When you have a low volume, high intensity program and you're doing 8 sets a week for every muscle, and then a study comes out saying 30 sets for your triceps is best, you're going to keep second guessing the training that you're doing. And ultimately, when this new study comes out every 2 weeks, you've gone 2 years and you've programmed top for 2 years in a row. So maybe it's not that extreme, but I think you're starting to get where I'm going here. Science is great, but at the end of the day, as long as you aren't training on the extreme end of the spectrum in either direction of any training fundamentals, such as too high or too low volume, like as long as you're not training with like 1 set a week or 100 sets a week, you're probably within the optimal range for volume. Science will typically only help to an extent outside of making sure you cover the basics, which you'll learn through experience anyways, and is generally common sense. So that's a whole point about the science here. So science can give you a good understanding of the fundamentals of training, of the basics of training. But after that, it's kind of up to you to experiment with what works best for you and track your progress over time. This isn't something that you can just guess. Like, you need experience and you need time training and time invested in the gym. So the one thing about science is there's never a study studying you. It's up to you, and it's up to your training and your reflecting on that training to understand what works best. And this is kind of how momentum works. Momentum also builds excitement within your training. You'll notice that instead of just going into a session to try and shock or confuse your muscle, you'll actually be able to build off of your last session and getting better at everything you do. When you adapt properly to a lift, your muscle grows. This isn't just strength, this is form, technique, setup, tempo, ability to handle volume and frequency, and so on. So let me explain a little bit more of what momentum is, because I'm sure a lot of you guys are still kind of confused on what it is. And basically what it comes down to is your ability to recover and build off of each lift within a week. So an example that I like to use within my own training is, let's take a lift. With my experience in lifting, I've put a lot of hours into the gym. I've been training for years at this point. I know exactly how long I need to recover between each session for each muscle group, how much volume, how much frequency I can handle, and starting to learn all of these things will help you become a better programmer. So if let's say I'm a beginner and I'm like, oh, well, I found out that incline curls and barbell curls and hammer curls are the 3 best lifts that somebody said on YouTube for my biceps. Like, how am I going to fit them in? I guess I'll do incline curls Monday, hammer curls Wednesday, barbell curls on Friday. And you're just kind of throwing like everything that sounds optimal into your program. The problem with this is you're never actually building momentum. You're just going in and you're trying to cover all of the optimal training variables in one program. The way that I like to view momentum within my training is, okay, well, incline curls are going to be the staple that I use to build my biceps. With my experience with these, I need 1 day in between to recover from them, and I generally only like to do them about twice a week. So I like to train my biceps 3 times a week. Let's do incline curls twice a week, and then on the 3rd day, we'll do another variation like a cable curl, a barbell curl, maybe a spider curl. So I'm building momentum off of the incline curls because I'm doing them enough. I know the frequency that works best for me. I know the volume, the proximity to failure, the rep range, the setup, the technique, the tempo. I could go on forever. That all work best for me. And with that, I get to get a little bit better each time and build momentum, because basically instead of just going to the gym and kind of trying each different thing on each different day, I'm actually getting better at something over time. And this is great for the mindset. It brings excitement into your training because you're building things that you like and you're building momentum within your program. You're building momentum within each lift. And understanding this, and I'm sure at this point you guys understand that this isn't a variable that you can program. It's understanding how to build off of volume, how to increase your volume over time, how to build your frequency. And I'm not saying you have to just keep adding more days, but how to understand what frequency is best, what volume is best, what rep range is best. And you can keep building and growing and refining each lift to get the best you possibly can at it, and ultimately the biggest you possibly can off of that lift. Here's the mindset to create and assess your training with. When you view your training through the lens of momentum, it allows you to see clearly which variables need to be changed without needing to rely on science. At the end of the day, science reveals that there are multiple ways to build muscle, and can often contradict itself over time. Rather than continuing to train one way only to change or question everything when the latest study comes out, I recommend you assess your own training and make adjustments when needed. This mindset will help you assess recovery, frequency, volume, exercise selection, proximity to failure, and the list goes on forever. So I don't want to stretch this video out too long, but the thoughts that I want to leave you with for today are: use momentum as a way to build things within your program. Find what works best for you and think about building off of that rather than just program hopping and lift rotations when you don't need to. Like, build off certain things, build momentum within certain lifts. And it's really only something that can be understood through experience. But when I get to the technical side of how to actually use momentum with each variable, I think this will all make a lot more sense for you. But in the meantime, try and think about this within your own training. It will help you guys a lot. With that being said, that's all I'm going to leave it at today. So thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments.